massive congratulations to David on Classroom Hero. Not only is it a great read, and it's very, very funny. For example, in my house, my son loved it. He absolutely adored the book, and now exclusively calls water hydrating juice, as you'll hear in the book. But apart from being very funny, very sensitive, it's a very important book in my view. David asked me if I would give you a complete history of the Irish education system in 5 minutes. To explain why there's thousands of Fionns in Ireland. The children we call opted out, even to say it sounds strange to me. The children who are forced to sit at the back of classrooms doodling, to be guests at their own class parties, and to be often absent from the class photo during 2nd or 6th class. How, in the name of God, and I specifically mean one particular type of God, do we have an education system that is almost completely monopolised and controlled by religious orders, and worse, to me, hardly anybody notices, or finds it odd for that matter? And I suppose I'm guessing, and I'm only making a guess because I don't know most of you here, I'm guessing I'm preaching to the converted. Don't worry, I have a ton of religious points in this. Some of you mightn't be aware how strange our education system actually is and how it came to be. For example, did you know that Ireland is the only country in the Western world where state-funded teachers prepare children for Catholic sacraments during the school day? Did you know that Ireland spends more time on faith formation than any other country in the OECD, except for Israel? And did you know that, thanks again, mainly to the religious orders, Ireland has by far the highest percentage of single-sex primary schools in the OECD at about 16-17%. In Europe, I think the nearest percentage is less than 2. The funny thing is, and it's not funny, is that it didn't start this way, and how recent a lot of it is. In fact, when the Irish education system was established back in 1831 with the famous Stanley Letter, it was designed to be a secular education system. And the Stanley Letter stated that children of all religions should be taught together in the same school. And most people believe that I'm not sure how altruistic it was at the time, but at the same time, making that statement was very powerful. It didn't matter who you were, what your background was, you were to be taught in this secular education system together. And I think most people believe that when the Irish state, this fledgling Irish state, was established in the 1920s, that the state simply couldn't afford to run the schools, so the churches came in like knights in shining armour and rescued the state. But that story just isn't actually true at all, and it would take a lot more than 5 minutes to tell you why it's not true, but believe me, trust me, it isn't actually true. Please trust me. I'd be able to tell you more if I had a bit more time, but what I found most interesting, really, about this time, and I think it's kind of interesting to me anyway, was even though the churches owned the buildings where education was going, you didn't necessarily have to be the same religion as the schools building. I mean, if the Catholic Church owned the building, it was open to all faiths and none, as if it was a Church of Ireland or a Protestant building, anyone could go to those schools. And there was secular time and religious instruction time, and they were separate. So in effect, we had a secular education system until as recently as 1971, and that's not that long ago. You know, at that time, I think in 1971, probably based on Rule 68 it was known, in 1965, which dictated that religion was by far the most important subject and should vivify and permeate the whole entire school day. In 1971, the new primary school curriculum came in, which integrated religious instruction and secular education. And I think it's important to say that here again, 1971, I mean, some of us in this room were born then, and many of us, in fact, I'd say the majority of us went through the education system not long after it. It's not that long ago, and it certainly was at a time when civil rights were starting to take hold. However, I know that despite it not being that long ago, 1971 was a different time in Ireland. a very different time. And as my Jewish mum used to say, and it was her joke, she didn't tell many jokes, this is her joke, Ireland is a country that's 95% Catholic, 5% Protestant, and the rest of us are Jews. That was her joke. Anyway, only a couple of generations later, Ireland is a vastly different, multicultural, progressive democracy. That is everywhere, except, I believe, in our schools. While many of us have organisations like Educate Together to thank for giving people like me and people like many of you a bit of a refuge, if we're lucky to have it, in the vast majority of schools, religion is still the most important subject, where teachers are forced to be missionaries and can be fired if they refuse to be so, where families have to travel hours a week just so their child can get a place in a school which treats them equally, and only if they're lucky enough to get a place. And all of this happens in a context where most people just go with the flow. And the Fionns of this world have to sit it out at the backs of classrooms. To me, David's book is important because it's the first to highlight the reality of the opted out child. And I hope when we are telling the history of the education system, even if it's only 5 minutes in the future, this book will be part of it. Well done, David.